What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. With me, as always, is Pastor Mark. We're here to help you take a next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to episode 129 of the Grow Podcast. We're really getting up there.
We are.
We'll do something fun for 150, or we won't. We'll find out when we get there.
You're assuming I'll live that long.
I think you've got 11 weeks in you.
Okay.
You've got 11 weeks.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
We did something really fun for episode 50. A little more haphazardly thrown together for 100. We'll see what happens. We might just mention, hey, it's 150. We'll see. We've been devolving in our celebrations, so we'll find out. And there's multiple podcasts now, so we can't be celebrating every 50th episode. That's too much celebration, or not. We'll find out. I don't know. Leo likes to celebrate. I think it's a cultural thing in the Philippines. There's always food. I don't complain about it.
That's right.
Maybe for episode 150, we'll have Leo come hang out with us.
That would be a great idea.
And he could bring us some Filipino food and tell us how wrong we are about all the stuff we're talking about. Which, by the way, if you haven't been around in a while and you tuned in and you're like, who's that guy? That's not Pastor Leo. Where have you been the last month or so? We've been talking about the split. So let me remind you real quick. Our study on the book of Romans is now called The Show with No Name, because I'm really good at naming things. And when things fall to me to name them, that's what happens. So just keep that in mind. My wife named our kids, thankfully.
Oh, we are so
The
glad
kid with
for
no
that.
name 1 and the kid with no name 2.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So The Show with No Name, that's where we're continuing in our study of the book of Romans. So if you're joining us on YouTube, it's very easy. It's still on our YouTube channel. You can just go find it. It's in its own playlist. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you're going to need to go find it. Excuse me. And subscribe to that one and stay subscribed to this one so that you can hear both of them. So that's where all that is. That's my administrative talk at the beginning of the podcast. How did I do, Pastor Mark?
Quite well.
Yeah,
I almost understood some of it.
I feel like how long have you been here now?
3 months.
3 months. In the 3 months that we have worked together, you've been my boss for 3 months now. I feel like 60% of my job has just been explaining what I'm doing to you and why I'm doing it.
Yes.
Like, this is called a podcast, and this is why we. And thankfully,
been a lot of that.
Thankfully,
yes.
For the most part, you've been like, "Oh, okay," and then I go, "You didn't get it, did you?" And you're like, "No, I have no idea," but it seems like you know what you're talking about.
But you have also become the person that I get to go to when I can't figure out something on my phone.
That's all. Yes.
How does this work? Would you push the right button for me?
That's also true. Yeah. And again, thankfully, it's not like at a super high difficulty level for me. So I'm like, I'll look real smart here as I press these 2 buttons, and I know how to fix this problem.
Yeah, the stuff I can't figure out is pretty basic.
Yeah, well, the good news is the stuff I can't figure out is usually pretty basic too when it comes to the Bible, and so that's what you're here for.
Okay.
See that?
Good.
Did you see that transition?
That was an awesome transition.
We call that a New Hope Here transition, where I just shove it in for no reason. We do that a lot at our online campus, but we've been continuing on in this Missing Piece series, which has been awesome. I love Christmas, but I am very glad this wasn't like a 9-month-long series. That's too much Christmas.
That would be
It's too much Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was you came to our staff meeting. I'm gonna give everybody a glimpse into who Pastor Mark is here,
and then I'll correct whether it's accurate or not.
You came to our staff meeting like the week before you officially started as our pastor,
right?
And kind of talked for a bit and did your Pastor Mark stuff, and then you let us ask questions. And I believe somebody asked a meaningful question of some sort, probably Hattie or something like that. One of those real spiritual people on staff.
Yes.
And then I chimed in, and I believe the second question,
which was probably less spiritual.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay. Yeah.
I chimed in for the second question, which was, do you love Christmas music, and will you listen to it in the summertime? And you said, no, I don't, and no, I will not. And I was like, this is the guy for us. This is the guy for us. Is that would that be correct?
That would be fairly
that would be
correct.
correct.
And our apologies to Pastor Mike.
Yes, we love you,
on all
Pastor
of
Mike.
that. We do.
We don't miss Christmas music in July. Although
But-
Pastor Leo starts celebrating in September and claims and then throws it's our cultural thing in the Philippines. And I'm like, well, now I can't even
you can't
say it. What am I
argue with
supposed to? Yeah.
Well, okay, I guess we really don't know what the culture is there, so can't argue.
So I'm pretty sure Pastor Mike has now moved to the Philippines just so he can celebrate Christmas.
Most likely. And we thought he went to Arizona.
Yeah, that was all pretend.
No.
He's in charge of the Southwest District, but the Philippines is where he headquarters now, so he can have Christmas year round. But okay, I have a question. My opening question.
Okay.
Because this was the last message of this Missing Piece series. We're out of the book of Mark 4:35 through 41. Is Mark your favorite gospel?
Yes.
Yeah. Why would that be,
Oh,
Pastor
there's no
Mark?
question about it. Because Mark...
You're so biased.
Oh, no,
You're
I
so
am,
biased.
I am very biased on this because the book of Mark does snapshots. When he tells a story, it's different than the other Gospels. I mean, they're all, especially the synoptic Gospels,
Yep.
are all very much the same. But he shortens everything up. And so I really like the way that he tells the story because he doesn't add stuff in that the other gospel writers do. And so it's like snapshots. It's just like kind of short. And I think that's kind of how I preach.
I was going to say, is
too.
this why your sermons are shorter?
That's why my sermons
you
are
were
shorter.
like, my name's Mark. I have to preach how Mark wrote. So
Yes,
interesting.
yes. I just like it. Get the point across, and when I have nothing more to say, quit talking. Because I'm not sure that a lot of pastors, I was going to say most, but not most, but some pastors keep talking after they've said everything.
Could
they
you?
know
And
already.
now you will name 5 of those pastors. All right, here we go.
I don't know any of who that might
Sure,
be
you're
at all. But,
it's a theory you have.
but I definitely preach shorter than most pastors.
I just think you're biased because he has the same name as you.
I think it's just because I'm not nearly as smart as they are.
Are you? I assume you were named after this Mark from the
Yes,
Bible.
my parents wanted all of us boys to have Bible names.
Melchizedek is your younger brother.
No.
No. Okay.
No, not quite.
Yeah. Dorcas
I
is your
did
sister.
threaten to name my oldest son Blastus.
Blastus.
Yes, that's a New Testament.
Where's that one at?
I think he's an assistant to Herod.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, that's a good Bible name. So I had to announce to the congregation before our first one was born, we've decided to call him Blastus B. Butcher. Wouldn't that be awesome? Nobody thought it was a clever idea, especially not my wife.
Yeah, Paula wasn't a huge fan of this idea.
So, yeah, we didn't go that route.
Oh man! All right, you talked a lot about circumstances at the beginning. So we went through the story of the disciples are on the boat and the storm comes and
Right.
Jesus is taking a nap, and so we'll again, hopefully you listened. If you didn't, you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/New Hope here, find the message, listen to it, because we're going to kind of dive into it more. So we'll be diving into something you're not familiar with, which could be very confusing. So make sure you go listen if you haven't done that yet. But you were talking about circumstances, and you said, and I quote, God has the ability to change your circumstances, which sounds great. But then my response would be, if he has that ability, and why would he put me there in the first place? If you're going to throw me into this storm where I'm almost drowning, why didn't you just be like, hey, if you take like a left, near Albuquerque, you're going to avoid that storm altogether, and then I don't have to almost drown because you have the ability to change my circumstances anyway. Why didn't you change them before they got terrible?
And that's what we expect God to do is if we've given our lives to him, if we're living for him, then certainly he's going to lead us into green pastures, and beside still waters and all of that.
That's in the Bible,
It
Pastor
is
Mark.
in the Bible, but it also goes on through the valley of the shadow of death.
I don't like that part
Yes,
as much.
we don't like that part, and we don't expect God to lead us into the negative things. But one of the things that I did mention in that message, and I think think it was a critical part of it, of what I wanted to get across. Whether or not it came across, I don't know. But what I really wanted to come across is God intentionally leads us into some storms in life. And that whole taking the disciples into the boat, it's all his idea. He knows the storm is coming, and he puts us in those situations. So often it's to show his power and his strength. I believe it was one time when somebody brought a blind man to him and said, "Why is this man blind? Who caused it?" And he says, "No, he has this for the glory of God," and then he heals him. And so by putting us in some storms, he causes us to rely on him. Because if we never have the storms, then I can handle everything. I'll take care of it. I've got this, Lord. You just sit back, and I'll handle everything. But when I'm in the middle of a storm and realize, like the disciples did, we are going to die if we, if something doesn't happen, then it gets us outside of ourselves, not relying on us, but relying on God.
Okay, I'm gonna jump to that now, because I had a question, and this is a question I've heard a lot of people ask before. It's even something that I've asked during some of the worst times in my life. So you're saying that God, it sounds like you're saying, I don't want to say you're saying, it sounds like you're saying God makes terrible things happen so that I can learn. So I've talked about it here on the Grow podcast before. I won't go into depths of it, but when I was in 17 years old, freshman year of college, my best friend and his girlfriend died in a car accident. Mm-hmm. And that was the biggest storm I've ever been through personally. Right. Are you saying that God killed my friends so that I could learn something from that?
No. I think that I might have said that.
No,
but it doesn't, because as Christians, we easily say those things.
Yeah, we do.
Somebody's going through a trauma like that, and we as Christians pat them on the back and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. God's in control. God has a reason for this.
Yep.
God, this is all God."
Everything happens for a
reason. I think God gets blamed for a whole lot of stuff that are just part of living in a sinful world.
Yep.
When sin came into the world, tragedy came into the world. And it's interesting, we want to blame God. We don't blame Satan for stuff.
Right.
We blame God for it, that he should have done something. And it's because he does have the power to stop it.
Right. Right.
But he has chosen to allow the results of sin to take place.
Yep.
And so I don't think that Jesus caused the storm.
Sure.
But I think he made sure he was with them when he went into the storm.
Yeah.
We're going into this together. Mm-hmm. They're trying to handle it by themselves because they're fishermen. They know the lake. They know the storm patterns. They know how this all works. We can handle this.
Yep.
And so he takes them into a situation where they would normally be the guys that we got this.
Yeah.
We'll take care of this.
Yep.
And he shows them, you can't take care of it.
Yeah.
And you need to rely on me. So I wouldn't say that God causes those things to happen. They do happen because we live in a sinful world and a flawed world, and just bad stuff happens.
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to make sure we touched on as I was listening to your message. Because thankfully, I'm years beyond that particular storm. There's other storms we have all the time, and so it's it's easier for me to deal with and process now. But I remember being in the midst of it, and it just like word for word on how you pat me on the back and be like, "Oh, God's in control. Everything happens for a reason." I was like, "I'm gonna throw you through a window." Like I don't want to hear that. God killed my friends so I could learn something. Like that's not what I want to hear, even though they might, no one's going to say it like that. Mm-hmm. But that's what you hear when you're in the middle of that storm. So I wanted to make sure people that are going through that storm right now aren't hearing like, this is God's fault that this is happening. Mm-hmm. Now, God might have been like, I see you're headed towards this storm and you're going to go through this storm and you're going to learn something from it, but I'm going to be with you during it. And that's, that's the purpose of this story was like as they get in the boat, Jesus clearly could have been like, "No, we should walk, guys. Let's skip the boat on this one. Yep. There's a storm ahead." But then they wouldn't have learned anything from that.
Right.
And he knew he was going to be with them.
And often there is a lesson that we're supposed to learn, But that's not the reason we're going through it. Because if it's, I've got to learn a lesson, then it's on me.
Sure,
I figure
sure.
out what that lesson is,
Yep.
and I'm suffering
makes sense.
and going through this agony, or my friends have died because I haven't learned the right lesson. And that puts it back
Sure.
on me again, and it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's always about him, and I can't be taking those things back and blaming me for it. That, oh man, if I could just learn, because I've done that when I've been in the middle of a storm,
Yeah.
a difficulty, and going, okay, if I could just figure out what the lesson is here, then all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
going to be all right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not about me.
Yeah.
God has much bigger purposes than just teaching me a lesson.
Yeah, and just our like bend towards always thinking the world is revolving around
Oh,
us.
yeah.
Comes out in those kind of moments. Yep. And I don't like to admit it, but I'm like you in that I've been in those experiences too, once or twice. I don't know. That's, in fact, that was another thing I had highlighted. You talked about we blame ourselves for the storms.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? You know, what did I screw up here that this could happen? You know, like we'll bring up Jonah. And we're like, well, the storm Jonah went through was because he was bad, and then they threw him into the ocean. And so clearly, if I'm going through a storm, it's because I did something wrong. So I need to figure out who needs to throw me off the boat, and then everything will calm down.
And the fact is, there are some storms that we cause.
For sure.
I mean, because we chose to sin, or because we chose to do something wrong, or because we hurt somebody, whatever it is. There are some storms that we cause, and we need to recognize that and confess that, and God will make that right. But not everything is about me.
Yeah. And the point you had kind of after that, we kind of then get accusatory, I think that's a word, towards God, and we're like,
blame him.
Jesus, you left me, like where were you at? And then we see the disciples do that as well, where okay, so Jesus conquers storms was your point, but we watch the disciples try to handle the situation themselves and fail miserably. Not great sailors, apparently.
Well, but it's beyond their abilities.
Right.
I mean, they may have been great sailors.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, see, again, it's blame me because I'm not good enough to handle it. No, they may have been doing everything right in that situation.
And it was just too big
and
for
there's a storm bigger than their capacities, than their abilities.
So then they finally go to Jesus, who's been with them the entire time.
Yes.
This wasn't, there's a different storm where he's not with them and he walks on water to come out to them.
Right.
And that's a different lesson we learned in that one. In this one, he's
there
the whole time. And they weren't on the Titanic. It's not like it would have taken them 4.5 hours to locate him on this boat that they were on.
Yes, he is right there.
They knew where Jesus was.
Right beside them. And sound asleep.
Yeah, what a sleeper Jesus
that just
was.
Blows my mind, because physically, what he had just exerted with the preaching and the teaching and the healing and all that took out of him, he is so exhausted that he's sound asleep, or he's so at peace.
And that's what I was going to bring.
He's sound asleep.
Last week we talked about that inner peace, and we see the perfect example of it in Jesus. And the combination of the physical exhaustion and then just the inner peace of, I'm not, I know who's in control right now. So all these things are happening around me, but not once, not for a second was Jesus like, ooh boy, like,
what do we do?
Yeah. And just that inner peace that he had. But so when they finally do go to him, I just loved it so much, because I've done it before. I know people I care about that have done it before. They wait and they wait and they wait. They finally go to him. And then they still blame him.
Yes.
Even though they did.
Don't you care? Don't you realize what's going on here? Come on, deal with this.
And he just it's not like he was surprised, I'm sure. Like he knows what's going to happen. But it still must have just been flabbergasting, where you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, I've been here the whole time. Come to me, an hour ago, and we would be done
and
already.
Something that just comes to mind right now is, what did they expect him to do? Because they're totally shocked when he calms the storm.
Sure.
So they're not expecting him to get up and I'm going to calm this storm. I'm just going to say, quiet, be still, and it's all going to... They're totally shocked that happens. And so... the only thing that I can think of that they're expecting is help bail. you know, or
Yeah,
row,
right.
something.
Just do what we're doing.
Do the same thing, exactly.
Yeah.
Do the same
Yeah.
things that we're doing. Help us to do it.
Yeah.
They're not expecting, and I think that's so often.
Yeah.
We expect God to do what I'm doing, only make it work.
Just a little bit. Like,
Yes.
I clearly have
What-
the answer.
Yes, I am
just make it
doing the
work.
right things. Now just make it work for me.
Yeah.
Okay, Lord. Instead of saying, okay, God, this is yours. We have no hope but you.
Yeah.
And let him decide what needs to be done rather than me deciding we need you to help bail water here or we need you, to be in a panic with us. Why are you not in a panic with us at least?
Yeah, sometimes it is comforting, even though it's maybe not a true comfort, to like see someone else
Yes,
panicking
yes.
about the thing you're panicking about. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. This
Yes,
is terrible.
it's not just me. This is a bad situation.
But yeah, it's almost like they didn't even go to him for help. They just went to him with their frustration.
Yes.
Of like,
Yes.
what's the deal? Like, instead of, even in that moment when they finally go to him, they're still not,
Yes.
okay, we can't do this. We need you, Jesus. They're just like, what's your problem?
That makes me wonder, how many times do we go to him
Yeah.
not for help, just to vent?
Yeah.
Let him know, come on, God, you should be doing something. We
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but do something here.
Yeah. And his response is just so, I mean, just the calm. You talked about the calm in his response and the control, where he's just, why are you afraid?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I would be so mad if I was the disciples. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why am I afraid?
But did you notice that he, first of all, speaks to the storm?
Yeah.
He tells the storm to calm down.
Yeah.
So everything is now, okay, it's settled.
So that they
now
can
he
learn.
turns to them.
Yeah.
I would have turned to them immediately and say, would you guys just trust me? Don't you realize who I am? But he addresses the storm. He gets that taken care of. Then he pulls it into a teaching lesson for them and says, why were you afraid?
Okay, I want to ask you about that. Does that mean if I feel fear, I don't have faith?
I'm going to say yes.
Ooh, please expand.
Because fear is a lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not, I don't have faith like I don't believe in Jesus anymore. Because obviously we, as Christians,
Right.
experience fear. We still believe in Jesus. We still trust him. But yes, I would say fear, anytime it comes up, is a lack of faith of trusting God to handle it. But not a lack of faith if I don't believe in Jesus anymore.
Right.
But a lack of trusting him and knowing that he has my best interests at heart. He's going to take care of this. So, yeah, I would say anytime I'm fearful, it's because my faith is weak. That's not a thing like, oh, I should be condemned for that. Mm-hmm. It's part of being human. And it's part of learning and growing in our walk with him. And I see elderly people who have been through a lot of experiences with the Lord that don't have the fear because they've seen how it's worked. And so those of us that are not as mature spiritually, we have more fear. Because our faith is not nearly as strong.
Yeah.
We haven't seen how Jesus has taken care of things enough that we finally get it, hey, I can totally trust him in the middle of this storm, that he's in charge, and it doesn't mean that the storm's going to go away necessarily, but I'm okay as long as he's with me.
Did you know you were quoting a song from the 90s during this message?
Evidently not.
Sometimes he calms the storm. Sometimes he calms his child. Do you remember that song from the 90s?
I think that's probably where we kind of remembered that.
I just remember it being
I'd forgotten that
it
completely.
was a go-to radio.
Wow, that is just really a clever phrase there, turn of a phrase. I just really like that.
Do you remember? You don't remember that song? I think it was called "Sometimes He Calms the Storm."
I think yes.
It was
now
a
that
go-to
you're saying it
on
I
the
am
radio.
Going, oh yeah, I think I have heard that somewhere before.
I was very convinced as a child that the line went, "Sometimes he calms the storm, and sometimes he calls his child," and I never understood it.
That would be.
I was wrong.
Quite.
All right. Well, everyone go listen to that song from the 90s. It's a good one, but it is a great, I did enjoy.
It's a great truth.
It is a very great truth.
Because sometimes he does just get up and say, be quiet, be still, and the circumstances are changed just radically in a moment.
Yep.
But sometimes he lets us go through that storm because there are things that he wants to grow in us.
Yeah.
And I am convinced there are some storms that you have to go through because it's the only way you're going to grow. It's the only way that your relationship with him is going to be stronger, that you see, okay, God can be trusted through this experience, through this storm. Whereas otherwise, I wouldn't learn that.
So you were talking about Jesus addressing the disciples. He asked them why they're afraid. You were saying, like, you don't think that's an accusation. It was just him stating, like, there's no reason for you to be afraid. I'm here with you. I'm in the boat was your line.
And that's my interpretation of it.
Right.
Because I don't know I don't know his tone and how he said it. I just know in his love for them and his concern for them that I just think that's probably the way he said it. And
I liked the I'm in the boat part because it brings me back to the first message in this series when we're talking about Mary and Martha and how Mary had figured it out. Just be with him. Like, he's there. Just be with him is the first most important thing.
Yep.
Sit at the feet of Jesus. And it was the last thing his disciples tried in this scenario was go be with Jesus. Like, something terrible is happening right now. Be with Jesus. They, like you said, they're trying to toss the water out and they're trying everything they can think of to fix it. But they're doing the Martha move, right? I'm going to do all of these different things and not bother Jesus with it, and which we're going to get to in a second. But Mary, just like with Mary, just be with him. The first and most important thing is be with him, and he can handle everything else. And something, sometimes it's comforting to see the disciples miss those things too, since we often miss them.
And what different situations? One is because I'm so busy that I need to stop and be with Jesus, and one because life is traumatic right now, and it's terrible. I need to stop and be with Jesus.
And you, where was I'm lost myself in my notes. Oh yeah, here we go. It's happening to me was your like Jesus saying, like, this is happening to me too because I'm with you. Like, we're not alone in those things because he's here with us. That is such a comforting thought that, like, yes, he's with me while this is happening, but it's happening, it's as if it's happening to him too. Like, Jesus was on the boat. That storm was threatening Jesus's life as well, right? Like, Jesus was a person. He was capable of drowning. Like, he died on the cross from something that would kill you and I on the cross, right? He was capable of dying in that scenario, in that situation too. That storm was happening to him as much as it was happening to the disciples. I thought that was really helpful to think about it that way.
We see that in Saul when he's confronted. He's going after the Christians, trying to kill them, imprison them, whatever. And when Jesus appears to him, he says, "Why are you persecuting me?" In that, and why are you doing this against me? It's like, okay, so if something is happening against believer, it's happening against Jesus. And so in this storm, that storm's coming against me, that storm is coming against Jesus. So it's like he's got his arm around me, and buddy, we're going through this together. You are not alone in this. I am with you in this. This is happening to me in the same way.
You going back, something we just touched on, and then just going back a little bit to the disciples' reaction. Do you ever try to, like, not bother Jesus with something, kind of, like, because you even just kind of said it a little bit, and like when we're talking with Martha, right? It's, her personality was just, I'm just going to handle all of these things, and then the disciples, it was almost like, well, he's tired because he just preached for a while. So again, it doesn't explicitly say that, but I've been in that situation before where I'm like, well, this is small enough,
right,
where I should be able to handle this myself.
I think that's a danger that we all have, is we think things are small enough, are not a big enough deal that we don't take this to God. That's where if we're making decisions that are contrary to We just don't think about asking God about it. We can handle this. We have this. We'll take care of it. That happened in the Old Testament with Joshua after they had conquered Jericho. And just this tremendous victory that they had. Now they're going to go over to this little tiny city of Ai, and he never even asks God how we're supposed to do this. He just moves into it, and they suddenly lose a battle, and it's like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And I think through life, we figured some things are too small for God. Mm-hmm. And God cares about those little things as much as the big things. And sometimes if we're not relying on him for the little stuff that we do, just the daily stuff that we do, that just have that concept, not necessarily stopping and praying, okay, Lord, should I brush my teeth today? Or be with me as, as I eat my breakfast or whatever. Not that much, but having that entire mindset of I am seeking God's will today, and what does he want for me? And even in the little decisions, if I'm relying on him, then some of those little decisions that lead us in a wrong direction, we won't run into those as much if we're daily relying on him moment by moment, including him in our lives of just the routine stuff that we do.
So you, like your last point before your conclusion, I didn't like. So I'm going to bring it up. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I didn't like it. You said whether or not the storm ceases is irrelevant. And I didn't like that one because it doesn't feel irrelevant to me.
Right.
If my loved one is dying and they don't get better, it doesn't feel irrelevant. If I lose my job and I am in danger of losing my house and I don't find a new job in time and my family gets evicted, it doesn't feel irrelevant. How do I don't even know the right word to justify that truth with the weight of those storms when it's like, no, this is when I needed you to calm, Jesus. Like this is ruining my life or ruining my family.
What was the rest of that? Whether or not
the storm ceases is irrelevant. You're going to be okay.
I think you got to have the last part of that.
Yeah, and I agree.
Yes.
But
you've got to realize
and I was
you
gonna
are going to be okay.
I was going to say that, but I hear
my
that,
prayer always is take care of the storm.
yeah,
I mean, you listen to any prayer that you pray. We pray on Sunday morning. We are praying, Lord, take this illness away.
Yep.
Lord, provide safety when we travel. Lord, take care of peace in Israel. Lord, do this.
Yep.
It's always because we're asking him to deal with the storm, to take it away. That is not a wrong thing to do. And I think we should be praying that way. I think we should be praying, Lord, heal, this person that's going through cancer as they're going into surgery. Lord, guide those doctors' hands. Lord, take care of this problem. Any storm, we should be praying, Lord, take the storm away.
Jesus gave us that example again in the garden. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. But
exactly.
He said, please take this from me.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want this.
And so praying for that storm to be taken away is not praying out of his will.
Yeah.
But always ending it, not my will, but thine. I want your will above anything else, and you know what is best. We've got to keep in mind that he wants what is best for you. He has created you. He has created your life for what is the best for you. And to know that he can be trusted, even if the storm is not taken away.
Yep.
He still can be trusted. He is still Lord. He still wants what is best for me and is giving me the best life that is possible. That is trusting him completely. That is having faith in him.
I think sometimes the wanting what's best for me gets muddled when I think about what's best for me. And also when I forget that what's best for me is what's best for the kingdom.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm a part of the kingdom. So what's best for me is what's best for the kingdom. So sometimes I might have to go through some stuff that's terrible.
Right.
And not one human I could find would be like, that's the best thing for you right now. But God wants what's best for me, because what's best for the kingdom is what's
Yeah.
best for me. And we get so short-sighted when we think about what's best for me, right? I lost my house, or this relationship or whatever, and these things, but my existence goes on beyond my death.
Right.
And what's best for me goes on beyond my death and beyond what happens here on earth right now. And I think that is such an important reminder for me, because when I hear you say whether or not you're going through the storm is irrelevant, I immediately get defensive. I'm like, no, it's not, because this thing's terrible, and my family matters, and my friends matter, and people I care about matters, and my financial security matters. And I'm not, we're not saying that those things don't matter, but God's best for us goes so much beyond our experience.
And I think
here
that's
right
something I didn't bring out in the message at all, that is just a great truth, that if God came to me and said, okay, are you willing to go through this storm if 10 people are going to come to know Jesus as Savior? Are you willing to go through this storm if it takes your child who's rejecting the Lord right now and it's going to turn him around? Yeah. I would say, yes, bring on the storm, for sure, if it's going to have those kinds of things. Well, we don't have that insight, and there again, it's trusting the Lord that He is doing what is best, not just for me, but like you say, for the kingdom, for other people. If that's what it takes, you hear old stories about missionaries that went and they never had a convert, but after they died, converts came because of what they had done. If that's what it costs, yes, I would choose that if I knew that was taking place. He doesn't come to me and inform me of everything, and this is what's going to come out of this, because He wants me to just trust Him. And I have the opportunity to do that and say, okay, you're bigger than I. You see the storm. You see life after the storm. You know what is needed for the kingdom's sake, for eternal purposes, not just my temporary comfort.
Yeah. I think a good, before we get to the discussion questions, a good next step this week is just right out of your conclusion from the message. Just whatever storm you're going through, a big one, a really, really small one, or maybe you're not going through a storm right now, but you're probably going to have one coming up at some point, and it's just giving up control in that storm. So, we've talked a lot about what that can look like practically, so I'm not going to recap all of it now, but just call on Him. Go to Him first. Don't go to Him last. Don't think your storm's too small. Definitely don't think it's too big. Yes. Just go to Him first.
Absolutely.
Be with Jesus first. And so, spend that time in prayer, spend that time in His Word. Be intentional about giving over control of that storm to Him first. Let's go to your discussion questions quick. Again, these will be in the podcast notes or in the YouTube video description. And of course, Pastor Mark read out of Mark. So if you want to get the scripture up, it's like nepotism, scriptural nepotism. You only are going to teach out of Mark from now on. Right. All right. The first question: are storms? And again, a lot of these we've talked about. So if you listened closely, you can be real smart in your discussion time. If you're doing this with a small group, that's awesome. If you have a family member that you can talk through these things, maybe your kids or your spouse, that's great. A friend. Or even if you're just by yourself, ask yourself these questions and try to answer them thoughtfully. First one, are storms part of God's will for our lives? Second question, how do storms strengthen our trust in Jesus? Excuse me. Third question, think of times when you tried to handle the storm by yourself and what brought you to the end of yourself. That's an interestingly worded question. Question 4, what have been difficult storms for you? That's one that I really encourage you, especially if you're with a group, to answer that one. It's just so helpful to hear other people's experiences and to learn from each other. We talk about it all the time. We grow best when we're in community. That's one of the big ways we grow in community is Pastor Mark has experienced things that I haven't gone through yet. And if he's shared those with me, then I can learn from him because he knows, did he do that right? Did he do that wrong? What would he do different? And then when I experience something similar, I can have learned from him. So what have been difficult storms for you? Next one, how did Jesus calm the storm or calm you in the storm? Again, almost quoting the song from the 90s. By the way, go find that song. Sometimes He Calms the Storm. I'm almost positive is the name of it. Listen to it. Let us know if you like it in the comments, please. And then the last one, are trust in God and giving Him control the same thing? That's an interesting question. That one stood out to me when I was going over these, getting ready. I would like you to give an answer to that one, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Are trust in God and giving him control the same thing? Well, if we're in a small group setting right now, Pastor Mark, and somehow I ended up as the leader of the small group, that was a huge mistake. And I asked that question. How do you answer that one?
Yes.
Oh, all right, and we will see you
We
guys
got
next
that one taken care of.
Because that's what I would be like, yes? Yeah.
I mean, are they exactly the same? No, there's nuances that are different. There's some trusting God that doesn't have to do with control. But I think the two have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, I trust God, and then I'm running my life.
Sure.
If I'm in control, then I'm not trusting him, I'm trusting me.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the two have to go hand in hand. And giving him control requires trust. So, the two have to go together.
Well, that is everything for this week. This one was a little longer than last week.
I'm getting long-winded.
Right?
No, I think you did
Yeah,
most of the
this one
talking.
was on me. Next week I won't say anything. I'll just sit in silence.
That will not happen.
Be like, welcome to the Grow Podcast, Pastor Mark, and then I'll just stare at the camera. Actually, I'll stare at my close-up camera and just. I'll give you some.
That will be so effective.
We'll try it. We'll give it.
No,
we'll give
we
it a
won't
shot.
try it.
All right, that will not be episode 130. Maybe that'll be our episode 150 celebration. Who
We'll
knows?
see.
We'll find out.
You not talking would be our celebration. Is that what you're saying?
Is that what you're saying, Pastor?
That's what I heard. But
Let us
I don't
know in the comments if you want me to stop talking during the podcast. I'm okay with that. If you do, I get it. New Hope family, I just want to tell you how much we love you, how thankful we are that you join us on this podcast, that you're a part of our family. We love you so much, and we're so glad that you are using this resource to continue to grow during the week. Don't do it by yourself. If you're not in a small group yet, get in a small group. If you attend our Williston or our Tioga campuses, go find Pastor Hat, any of the staff, Pastor Isaiah in Tioga, get in a group, because we grow best when we're in community. It's awesome that you're here on the Grow Podcast. Get in a group with other people. Start one if you don't have one. Invite some people over to watch the podcast with you and go over these discussion questions. But we say that because we care about you. We do this podcast because we want you to grow. We want to give you as many different ways as possible to continue to grow in your relationship with Jesus. There's nothing more important to me as the individual than grow in my relationship with Jesus and share that, who he is, with other people. So we're so glad that you're here. Again, I say this a lot. Don't just listen and gain the head knowledge from this. Let's find a way to put it into practice this week. That's why we have some practical application to these things. So let's have a great week. We love you again. Pastor Mark, thank you so much for your teaching. I really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time.